Alrighty, so for my study, I wanted to focus on finding an effective treatment for women struggling with attention deficient hyperactivity disorder, in other terms, ADHD. As for my research question and hypothesis, my question is physical exercise or medication the most effective in treating women with attention deficient hyperactivity disorder? As for my hypothesis, for this study, I believe that the participants will have a better time focusing after exercising than after taking a short-acting stimulant, which is a medication used to treat ADHD. I really wanted to focus on just girls and women with ADHD, as there are numerous studies predominantly or mainly just focused on males with the disorder. I also like to believe that there are better alternatives to Western medicine when it comes to treating mental health. As for prior research, I think it's incredibly important to observe how these treatments are when it comes to girls and or women, especially in a larger sample to see how generalizable these findings are to women within the US and hopefully even on a global scale. There's a great article that actually focuses solely on female participants with ADHD and follows their symptoms up until adolescence, and the researchers address the poor amount of studies dedicated toward women struggling with the disorder. Another study seeing the effects of cognitive behavior therapy on those with ADHD had female participants make up about 66% of their sample, which is a higher than average for most studies. A different article focused on the way the symptoms of ADHD were displayed by the younger female participants, demonstrating the 3 subtypes of ADHD out there. I just wanted to bring attention to a few of these articles that I personally found not only interesting, but fairly easy to read and go through than other empirical articles. Alrighty, moving on. As for methods of treatment such as exercise, I personally think they should be viewed as a respectable and sensible option. There are fewer side effects and more of a beneficial gain for anyone who resorts to it. For example, research has been conducted on mice, clinically supporting the theory of exercise being a useful form of therapy for ADHD. As for my study design, I will be conducting an experiment which will include 2 independent variables that will also have 2 levels to them. The first independent variable will be physical activity and is operationally defined as exercise, or more specifically, physical movement and exertion that will lead to an increase in focus. The first level to this variable is strength training weightlifting, and the second one being aerobic exercise, which is just another word for cardio. The second independent variable will be the prescribed medication and is operationally defined as short-acting stimulant taken to increase focus levels. The first level to this variable is amphetamine, also known as Adderall. The second level is methylphenidate, commonly known as Ritalin. The reason why I'm doing 2 of the same kind of stimulants is to help enhance the internal validity of my experiment, since I have no control group. The dependent variable for my experiment will be the focus levels of the participants and will be measured through the completion of a test that requires the participants to listen to a story and react whenever they hear certain character names. I'll go further into detail about that later on in the presentation. The participants will also keep a journal on hand to write down any instances of feeling distracted throughout their day. Alrighty. And for the strengths and limitations of prior research, for the strengths, there are studies that have large amounts of female participants involved. Some of these studies address the lack of representation for women and encourage for more research to be conducted to fix this imbalance. There's also a positive amount of research showing that exercise is recommended for ADHD. As for limitations, a majority of the research done on ADHD is heavily focused on boys and or men. Studies with a heavy focus on girls and or women usually have participants between pre-adolescence and 18, and sometimes even in their 20s. However, researchers rarely follow the effects of ADHD on women entering their 30s or 40s. As for my sampling method and sample group, since I'm studying women with ADHD specifically, I would need to conduct a representative sample. So for that, flyers will be posted around different school campuses, elementary, middle, and college, and notices will be sent to pediatric centers and clinics requesting for female participants already diagnosed with ADHD who are interested in being involved with the study. Of course, monetary compensation will be offered to those willing to participate. The sample group would consist of 100 participants clinically diagnosed with ADHD already and have to be within the ages of 11 to 40 years old. Participants will be in a within subjects design, reducing the need for a comparison group. For a month, the participants will be taking short-acting stimulants and have their focus levels tested once a week, and then they will get switched over to a randomly assigned physical activity. They will then complete the daily recommended length of exercise and have their focus levels recorded once a week as well. As for the study procedure, this study will take approximately 2 months to observe and collect data from the participants. It will begin with the volunteers consenting to taking short-acting stimulants. To randomly assign participants to a medication, all 100 participants will be designated a number generated by a computer. Those assigned any of the numbers from 0 to 49 will be assigned to taking Adderall. Those who received any of the numbers between 50 to 100 will be taking Ritalin. This will be further broken down by randomly assigning numbers to the participants in each medication group to a physical activity they will transition to. Those taking Adderall will be split into 2 groups after being assigned a random number. Those who receive any numbers between 0 to 24 will be assigned to transition to strength training, and those who receive any numbers between 25 to 50 will be assigned to transition to aerobic exercise. The same method will be applied to those taking Ritalin. For a month, the participants will be taking their prescribed medication and will keep a journal on them to write down any instances of feeling distracted throughout their day. Once a week, the participants will come in and complete a concentration exercise that requires them to listen to a story. Before this, however, participants will be informed of 3 names they have to listen for and react to. Each name will have an assigned reaction. For example, the participants will be instructed to ring a bell when they hear the name Lisa, knock on the table once they hear the name Danny, and to tap their nose once they hear the name Gwen. The number of instances and distractions that the participants experienced throughout their day, and the times participants did not react to the name said will be used to measure their focus levels. On the 2nd month, the participants will transition from the medication to their assigned physical activity. The American Heart Association recommends moderate to high intensity muscle strengthening activity, like resistance or weight training, at least twice a week, and at least 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity, or 75 minutes per week of vigorous aerobic activity. For those doing the strength training, it would be best to start the participants off at a beginner level, despite the possibility of them having any previous experience with using free weights. The participants will stick to a 3-day-a-week workout split. Day 1 will consist of arms and shoulders exercises, Day 2, leg exercises, and Day 3, back, chest, and abdominals. For aerobic exercise, it would be in the best interest to take extra care, given that some participants may have breathing issues or other physical limitations. Using the guidelines and examples the CDC provides in terms of aerobic exercise, the participants will be given the option of walking fast, riding a bike on level ground or with few hills, jogging or running, or sports. During this month of physical exercise, the participants will again complete the concentration exercise once a week. These stories will be different every week and have different names each time to avoid memorization. It will also still be required of them to keep a journal on hand to record any instances of feeling distracted or struggle to focus. As for the strengths and limitations of my proposal, the strengths are that my study would provide results that are more applicable to women with ADHD specifically. It also looks further into the advantages of exercise for treating ADHD. If the results show support for my theory of physical exercise being a better option, then it could potentially help others become healthier mentally and physically. Some limitations would be that I use representative sampling rather than a probability sample, making the sample group slightly biased. I also did not take into account the seriously physical limitation a participant could possibly have, which was inconsiderate on my part. As for what's next, hopefully I can conduct this study with older women as well, or even have a separate study with solely men to see how the results compare, and if exercise can be a recommended treatment for both women and men. It would also be great to see how the study would turn out if done in different countries, and truly see how generalizable the study is. And that would be all for my study. Thank you guys for listening and providing your time. This was a blast.